goggles were cracked. There was a tear in his Kevlar over his helmet and a buckshot pellet on the inside collar of his body armor. And so I said, "Hey, I've got to ask, what's that from?" He goes, "I took a shotgun blast from an upper story window."
Welcome to the Cops and Riders Podcast. Your host, Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell, worked the streets in one of the nation's largest police departments for over 25 years. Ride along with O'Donnell and his expert guests as they help you navigate the oftentimes confusing and misunderstood world of law enforcement. O'Donnell and his guests on this show do not represent any law enforcement agency. The content of this show is not meant to be legal advice. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do.
Hey, Cops and Riders, thanks for being here with us today for another episode of the Cops and Riders Podcast. I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and I'll be your host for today's show. This show is listener-supported, so thanks to all of you who keep the show going. I would especially like to thank those of you who are patrons of the show. Your generosity helps pay for the software, equipment, and my time producing this show. Yes, you too can become a patron for less than a cup of coffee or a pint of Guinness. Just head on over to patreon.com/Cops and Riders. Welcome back, everyone, for the conclusion of my interview with the FBI agent that transitioned from FBI Special Agent Accountant to FBI SWAT Sniper and Bomb Tech. My guest on today's show, Barry Black, has been involved in investigating multi-million-dollar crimes to being a SWAT sniper at the Waco standoff, a bomb tech at the Oklahoma bombing, and 9/11. Let's get to know Barry. Barry joined the FBI in 1988 and was assigned to the Oklahoma City Division, where he primarily investigated complex financial crimes. Mr. Black served as an FBI SWAT sniper for several years, including a 51-day deployment to the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas in 1993. The following year, Mr. Black was certified as a bomb technician at the FBI's Hazardous device school. In 1995, he was a first responder to the bombing of the Oklahoma City's Alfred Murrah Federal Building and remained a member of the OKBOMB Task Force. As the threat of terrorism grew, Mr. Black was assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, where he worked with international partners in the global war on terror and trained highly specialized military and counterterrorism units in hostile regions around the world. Domestically, Mr. Black responded to the 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombing, the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, the 2005 bombing at the University of Oklahoma, the bombing of a U.S. Air Force recruiting station, and in a complex undercover operation helped thwart a 2017 truck bomb attack targeted a major financial center in Oklahoma City. After retiring from the FBI, Mr. Black became an adjunct faculty member at the University of Central Oklahoma's Forensic Science Institute. He has served as a consultant, keynote speaker, and provided commentary for various national and international media outlets and documentaries. In 2026, his book, Hazardous Devices, Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper, was published by McFarland and Company. Please enjoy the conclusion of my chat with an FBI agent who has had a law enforcement career that they make movies and books about.
Once the FBI arrived, we took operational command.
Okay.
So the people there were concentric rings, multiple perimeters. So the press and the media were at the farthest ring. So there was security there. And then there was an inner ring where some of the media was allowed. And then closest where we were, obviously, but it was all FBI operators inside. But yes, you have a chain of command. So each of us would report to our team leader. The model then for the FBI, they would send down a team of special agents in charge, SACs, and a phalanx of assistant special agents in charge. And so the command system that we were all accustomed to was still in place, out in the field. It's not like I would get on the radio and talk to, the Department of Justice or something back in Washington. That was all back done at what today we would call an EOC, an Emergency Operations Center.
Now, okay. Now, you're there for 50 some odd days. Where did you stay? Like, where did you eat, sleep? I mean, your people, you need those things.
Yeah. So during the shifts, we got to enjoy some what I believe were Korea vintage MREs. Uh, so we got about every flavor of MRE there. But when we were not on shift, we stayed just at a little hotel there in Waco. Of course, Baylor University's in Waco. And I remember one morning we came in and the manager met us. He said, "Hey, we appreciate what y'all are doing, but we've got a basketball team coming in to play Baylor, so y'all have to leave." So we got invited to go somewhere else so the a basketball team could take our rooms.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I mean, and were you able like to call your wife every night when you
As
were?
much as you could. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
this was not a secret operation. It was on the news.
right. It was.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember.
as you see today, the news is not always completely accurate. So
Uh,
she
Almost
would she'd
never
be
actually.
upset. Well, they got a job to do, I guess. But she would say, "Well, I heard this and I heard that," and I said, "Listen, just don't even watch the news unless it's an FBI spokesperson. Don't things are fine. Don't worry." One night, a generator backfired in the compound. We turned the
Oh,
power off. They had a generator. Well, it's a generator backfiring. It sounds like a car backfiring. Well, all of the non-encrypted, public, like walkie-talkies and those things, we were monitoring all of those. And almost immediately, it was, a bomb has gone off, and
no.
agents are springing to their position. And these folks, they couldn't see what was happening. I mean, it's quiet in the
Right.
nighttime; you could hear it. So much of it is just, their jobs to sell stories, and
Sure.
sometimes you have to embellish a little, I think.
Was there any heartburn or bad feelings between you guys and like ATF? They were there first, and now you guys are coming in, and I don't know if there was any like locals as well. Was there any like animosity when you guys came in and during the operation?
No, no, none that I'm aware of. The first and really, I think, only interaction I had with that agency on scene was when their special response team operator briefed us. And I remember he was an older guy. They wore black BDUs at the time, and I remember his goggles were cracked. There was
Oh,
a tear in his Kevlar over his helmet,
wow.
and a buckshot pellet on the inside collar of his body armor. And so I said, "Hey, I've got to ask, what's that from?" He goes, "I took a shotgun blast from an upper story window."
Wow.
So yeah, it got real pretty quickly after that initial briefing. But afterwards, ATF, they stayed a little farther back. And early on, there was supposed to be a surrender, a negotiated surrender, and the Davidians were going to come out to us. We would search them, secure them, and then physically take them to ATF so ATF could effect the arrest
Okay.
since they had lost four of their people.
Sure, sure. Wow. So for those who don't know, like you said, you guys moved in, deployed tear gas, they set fires, and that pretty much ended the whole standoff. Were you working when that happened? Were you there?
Uh, it was the deployment, the tear gas deployment began early in the morning with some CEVs, combat engineering vehicles, with tanks of the chemical on the boom.
Yeah.
And I was actually in my second hotel after we had been thrown out of the first one.
Okay.
And we were almost to shift change. And the fire saw the fires erupt. We went down to our rally point. And then before they were out, my team was down on the compound. It's still smoking. Firefighters are still dousing the hot spots, and we secured it there. Texas Rangers were going to come in for the sake of transparency, which is a great idea.
Sure.
So we held that until some follow-on crime scene people arrived.
Wow. So this is all done and over. How big of a debrief did you do after this all happened? What's the craziest thing you saw when you were a cop? My first week on the job, a guy running at me with a butcher knife. He just killed his brother over the last hot dog. That's chapter 1. There are 33 more. Police Stories, The Rookie Years, just launched. Available now on Amazon. Search Police Stories Patrick O'Donnell or click the link in the show notes. Back to the show.
each team, we went back home. We'd been down there, 51
Yeah,
days.
you're
So
chomping at the bit. You were on. Yeah, it's time to go
we
home.
ready to get,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's time to go home. So we got back, and um, we're going way back in history. I mean, there was a formal debrief, but I mean, this is, except for the length of it, this is just what SWAT teams do. It was a particularly horrific event. I remember one of the last little girls that was released. Um, HRT came out to our position in a Bradley. The ramp dropped. One of the operators handed me this little. I remember her as a blonde-haired, fair-haired little girl. She was
Yeah.
about 10, and I carried her over to a health and human service worker, and she was scared. I mean, who
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
be? So I was talking to her, and it's funny. In this has been 3 decades ago. In my memory, I remember her name was Heather because I asked her, "What's your name?" and told her you're going to be fine. Uh, in preparation for our conversation today, I was reviewing some the congressional reports, and I that was her name. Heather Jones was the last little girl released. So it's amazing what you can remember,
Sure.
just those odd details after more than 30 years.
Wow.
But it was, it was sad. A lot of the kids had been shot or
Yeah,
stabbed,
they didn't
beaten
ask
to
to be
death.
there. Yeah, I mean,
They
you
had
feel
no
so bad for
choice.
them.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it was the children, the adults made choices, but the kids did not. It was that was still difficult.
Yeah. So that's all done and over with. Who gets the very unsexy job of processing that crime scene?
I can tell you when the team left, the Texas Rangers, Texas DPS came, and we sort of turned that over to them.
Okay.
Um, there were a couple of men that showed up I didn't recognize, and I stopped them, and it turns out they were FBI bomb technicians.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know we had bomb technicians. It remains a
Okay.
very small
Yeah.
program, but those were the first bomb techs I met, which got me interested in that program. But once we left, um, we just went to the next thing.
Sure.
So we had done our part, and I know the Rangers did a great job processing the scene, but really we wanted there to be absolute transparency. And of course, it was proven beyond any reasonable doubt that the fires were started from inside, and they had spread accelerants. It was windy that day. That
Mm.
place went up so fast. I was amazed at how fast it was raised.
Yeah, I saw videos and I've seen, pictures and especially the video, you're like, holy cow, that that went so fast. And I'm like, man. But people forget it that somebody's got to do the painstaking, difficult job of actually collecting evidence and processing the scene. Do you know how long that was a like active crime scene?
I don't. I wasn't there, and that really wasn't my part of it.
Yeah.
I remember standing there. The condition of the bodies. I mean, they
Oh,
were charred. One
yeah.
one one man in particular. I remember he had bandoleros of ammunition across his chest and a gas mask by his hand.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, it was a horrific scene. There was one cinder block kind of inner room where it was going to be the last refuge for the women and kids. And of course, the place collapsed. The walls were still standing, but when I went in there, I remember it was about hip deep in debris, but you could still see the ends of long guns just lining the walls.
Wow. Yeah,
And
their
the
last
remains of
stand.
the remains of the women and children were found under that
Oh,
rubble. It was difficult. It was a horrible scene.
yeah, that's terrible. Now, what do you think is one of the biggest lessons that we learned from that?
I mean, not to criticize anybody, I think it's been pretty well proven that the element of surprise for the initial raid had been lost.
Yeah.
And when best laid plans, right? If there's some major change in your tactical situation, sometimes you have to pull back and make another plan. Again, I'm never going to armchair quarterback
No,
anybody,
God,
but
no.
Um, so sometimes you got to change, and there's a tactical way to resolve. There's a way negotiations may work, but as I recall, even the negotiators said, they're not coming out. So then there's a plan. usually when gas is introduced, you saturate the area. Well, the theory was proffered to incrementally gas to try to drive them to certain areas. I, I'm no expert. I'm not sure that works. But again, this was totally new. Everybody was trying to do the best thing they could in the best way they thought, and nobody wanted it to turn out like it did.
No, and the thing about it is, I mean, most of the time you're talking about a residential house.
Right.
It's like, okay, with like, 3, 4 people, maybe. Not a compound full of
Yeah,
people,
this place was
that's,
huge.
yeah,
And
that's,
there was a buried bus, like a bus which had been buried as sort of a refuge in that interior building. And when you see the videos, I mean, I don't watch many of them, but the boom on that CEV, we were led to believe the avenues of egress had been blocked from the inside, so that if people wanted to leave, they couldn't. So the armor made holes in the sides of that. So and there were loudspeakers saying, come out.
yeah.
It really every effort was made, and it was that was a tough situation.
Okay. Well, let's fast forward a few years later. April 19, 1995, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols used an improvised explosive device in a U-Haul that detonated in front of the Alfred Murrah Federal Building, killing 168 and injuring 800 people. You responded. Were you assigned to Oklahoma when that occurred?
Yeah, I've spent my whole career here, so yeah.
Oh
So
God. Okay. Which is unusual. Most of the time you get moved around, but
right.
one office, that's very impressive. But
I
you
was
res
just good luck.
you responded as a bomb tech, correct?
Right. I'd met that first bomb tech at Waco at the fire, got selected for bomb school the following year, and then 53 weeks after I became a bomb tech, McVeigh bombed the Murrah building.
Which isn't you didn't get a chance to get a ton of reps in.
That was my first bombing case.
Wow. Well, man, I can't even imagine. Holy cow. So where were you when that occurred?
I was still on the SWAT team at the time, and we had a warrant for a fugitive in a white collar case because I was still doing white collar as well.
Okay.
I was at Tinker Air Force Base, which is about 7 linear miles away as the crow flies, and heard the detonation, felt it. It registered 3.2 on the Richter scale,
My
like
God.
an earthquake. And of course, it's flat here in Oklahoma. Looked over back towards town and could see this enormous black cloud starting to drift over downtown. And we still didn't have cell phones. I had a pager, so the pager was going off. Our secure radio in the bureau car said, something's happened downtown. Um, and I remember our ASAC, the assistant special agent in charge, he's I was brand new bomb tech, and our crime scene group was called ERT, the Evidence Response Team. It was brand new as well. That whole concept was new, and I had helped start that team. And the ASAC said, "Go do whatever it is you do.
Yeah.
Something's happened
That's a good
downtown. Go do
boss
whatever."
there. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, it is a good boss.
Yep.
So I got there. I was about 9:30, and again, the magnitude, the building, the front half, two-thirds was just gone. Cars had been burning. Glass was broken out in about a 12-block radius. 300 buildings had been damaged. Walking wounded, deceased, people that were trapped. And just kind of on a personal note, I mentioned my wife, who had put up with me through Waco and my absence when I went to bomb school. She was a federal probation officer, and I didn't know where she was. And
Oh man.
so turns out she had left the building 2 minutes before detonation.
Oh my God. Wow. I I can only imagine just the cascade of feelings that she had, knowing that, she left, and how many friends did she have or coworkers in that building?
Well, so the Murrah building, the federal building, was not the courthouse.
Okay.
So the federal courthouse was behind it across the street.
Mm.
And then there was another, it's called the old post office buildings where Machine Gun Kelly was
Oh, okay.
tried. And it was a very historic building. So the government occupied space in all of those buildings,
Okay.
but the government vehicles and her personal vehicle parked in the Murrah building garage. So a little before 9, she left her office. there were subterranean tunnels that connected all because the weather's kind of bad out here.
Yeah.
And she and two other officers had gotten in the government car, left the Murrah Building garage on the west exit, drove literally in front of the Ryder truck
Oh my
and got over
gosh.
to the highway when it detonated. And they thought they'd driven into one of those big construction holes. The overpressure pushed their car, and yeah, they thought they'd driven into a big hole.
Wow. So you're responding. Now, did you know your wife was going to be there that morning?
Well, I knew she was downtown. I didn't know
Okay.
where she was, and of course, I didn't have a cell phone. And the few
Oh,
cell phones that existed, they were all tied up. The system was overloaded.
how long
But
did it
about
take?
10,
How long did it take before you found out that she was okay?
well, about 10:30, so an hour and a half later,
Oh,
she paged me
yeah.
back into my own voicemail at my office. The FBI
Mm.
office was remote. And she said, I'm okay. I
Wow.
was leaving the building, but we've relocated to our alternate site, for head count and all that. But yeah, that was a very strange morning.
Man, so you're a bomb tech, you're responding to this. What's your role? What is your job there when you get there?
Well, the FBI certifies all the non-military bomb technicians in the country. So there aren't many FBI bomb techs. There were only two in the state,
Wow.
myself, and I was brand new, and the guy that got me in the program, that man I'd met in Waco. So our responsibility is in a post-blast situation is try to see what happened. We were told it may have been a gas main explosion or a plane crash because nobody's thinking large vehicle borne IED, not in 1995.
Sure.
But there was a 32-foot crater in the center of the street,
Ooh.
right in front of the building, and we found a twisted piece of metal, which we call the rear end differential housing, or the axle, basically,
Mm.
of a large truck, which had clearly exhibited blast damage. And a deputy sheriff called me and my partner, Jim Norman, over. The deputy spit on his finger, wiped away some grease, and revealed the confidential vehicle identification number.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so he called it out. Jim and I both wrote it down. Jim tore off his little note and handed it to a runner who took it to the command post, and they began running the CVIN, which led us up to Junction City, Kansas.
So something this huge, who's in charge and how is that dictated? Going back to incident command again.
So
Who was the head honcho?
it has evolved. Unlike the movies, it's not like, FBI, get out, we're in charge now. This is a partnership. Law enforcement is a partnership. And even though jurisdictionally, the FBI has primary jurisdiction over an act of terrorism, whether it's domestic or international terrorism, we rely on our partners. And what I've always told people, I teach at the university now, is that it's relationships and training that tamp down the chaos in these mass events. So um, Oklahoma City obviously had a stake, Oklahoma County. Um, Everybody came together, and there was really, I don't remember an instance where there was a any kind of a push and shove as to who's going to do what. Um, Jurisdictionally, the FBI had the ticket, but this was a community event, and it was approached as a community project.
So were you looking for secondary or thirdary, devices?
Sure. And actually, Patrick, we teach to look for secondary devices like we saw in the Atlanta Olympic bombing. Afterwards, Eric Rudolph would leave secondaries, but and tertiary devices, those third level devices.
Yeah.
But I was on the second floor of the building where the kids' playground was, and trying to get a sense of the blast pattern. There's the crater in the street, but you can sort of get an idea of the distribution of evidence. When I saw everybody running out of the building, all the first responders were leaving. They were screaming something. I couldn't hear them. Just the chaos is
Oh,
hard to describe.
right.
But I remember a helicopter was coming around from behind, and I'm guessing what else can go wrong. I thought the helicopter was coming down, so I'm thinking, where are
Oh,
they going to put the helicopter down?
yeah.
Well, then finally I heard somebody yell second device.
Oh,
Well, we train for that,
yeah.
and the odds of it being there, are real. So the trooper and I were able to scale down. We had actually a line of trees on the east side of the building. We were able to get off that second deck and go to the safe side of a large bomb truck to try to just figure out what had happened. The standard operating procedure for bomb technicians as first responders is find out what happened. If we're targets in the current wars, both Gulf wars, bomb technicians and explosive detection canines were primary targets.
Yeah.
Because if you can eliminate them, you can put down all the bombs you want. So
Sure.
I remember before we left the building, I looked up and there were a couple of ladies on an upper floor. And of course, they wanted out too, but they were trapped.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, but the SOP is depart and get a plan to resolve this other bomb. So it turns out there was a large wooden crate that for, rescue workers had found, and it had explosive markings on it.
Hmm.
So we sent bomb techs went in, recovered that. We put it in what's called a single vent trailer, which is all we had at the time. Took it out to a range and examined it. Well, inside I saw a tow missile. It's an anti-tank weapon,
Holy cow.
and you got to wonder what's an anti-tank weapon
Yeah.
doing in the Murrah building.
Right.
Well, and again, there are plans for these things, and what's nice is even in this chaos, there is a plan. If it's military ordnance, it's the military's responsibility. Back to pre-existing relationships, I knew the commander of the 761st Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group down at Fort Sill. We had coffee. We knew each other. He would
Okay.
actually take my call. So I said, look, you know what's happened in Oklahoma. We found what I think is a tow missile. I need your team to come up and evaluate it. So he dispatched a team immediately, great soldiers I'd worked with before. And they said, well, yes, this is a tow, but it's inert. It's been weighted properly.
Okay.
Everything about it is right, but it's inert. So don't know what to tell you. Well, obviously, we needed to find out what this
Right.
was. So as you may know, the tow missiles are sort of fire and forget weapons. They come
Yep.
in a launch tube. Once the missile's deployed, you just discard the tube. This particular one had been recovered and repurposed as part of a sting operation for another federal agency. So it
Oh.
was going to be used in an undercover sting.
Okay.
All the paperwork had been destroyed. And nobody knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah,
So we
but
were able to show
highly suspicious for sure.
highly suspicious. But at the onset of any of these cases, you have to think, it's chess, not checkers. This is
Yeah.
going to be a problem. We have to resolve it. And it was resolved really pretty quickly.
Now, as far as, refresh our memories, how was Timothy McVeigh and his partner captured? And
Well,
what was the resolution? How did they figure out it was them, and how quickly were they captured?
so I mentioned the confidential vehicle identification number. So we found that CVIN on that twisted piece of metal. Uh, we have InfraGard now, where we have agents or agencies that are friendly to us. We know one another. That didn't really exist then in an official capacity, but we had people in Ford Motor that said that CVIN belongs to a Ford Motor product. It was built for Ryder Rental Company. So we contacted Ryder Rental, and they said, yep, that's our truck. It belongs to a place called Elliott's Body Shop in Junction City, Kansas. So we flew agents up, and our state and local partners met us in Junction City. There's a man named Eldon Elliott who ran this little body shop where they rented U-Haul or Ryder trucks. And of course, the question was, who rented this particular truck? He goes, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. His name's Robert Kling. And he was a soldier, and he still had the paperwork. And then, of course, the team asked, was there anybody else there? Well, yeah, there may have been a second guy when he came to pick it up. He paid for it one day, came back another day. So we got sketches, and you may have seen the sketch of John
Yeah.
Doe 1 and John Doe 2. So we published those sketches and got about 16,000 leads just from the sketches.
God. Oh my
And
gosh.
of course, which one of those do you have to vet out? All
Right.
of them, right?
Yep.
But the name that kept popping up was Timothy McVeigh.
Mm.
So there was a guy in New York that said, hey, I know that guy. He was a security guard with me. So anyway, we did what's called an offline NCIC search. You're familiar with NCIC. And found that Charlie Hanger, Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper, had actually stopped a man named Timothy McVeigh about 90 miles north of the Murrah building, about 90 minutes after the detonation.
Wow.
He had driven an old yellow Mercury, And as the trooper uh, saw him pass, he noticed he didn't have a license plate on the rear of the car. So he pulled him over for not having a license plate. But when McVeigh got out, Charlie noticed a bulge under his jacket that he recognized to be a pistol. And McVeigh said, I've got a gun and mine's loaded. And in the classic cop response, Charlie put his pistol to McVeigh's head and said, "So is mine." That's my yeah. So Charlie arrested him, put him in the little county jail there in Perry. Well, when we did that offline NCIC search, we found that he was still in jail. So I flew up with Jim Norman and some other agents. We landed on the side of the highway. I seized his vehicle, and Jim and the rest of the team took custody of McVeigh. Of course, in this country, he's entitled to an initial appearance, um, but the courthouse had been damaged. So we set up a little courthouse at Tinker Air Force Base using their security forces, and I was still on the SWAT team, so we took him down for his arraignment and initial appearance. And as all that's going on, we had Terry Nichols already under surveillance. They had served in the Army together.
Okay.
We were looking at all of his friends and associates, and Nichols saw McVeigh's arrest on TV and surrendered himself to local
He
police
did.
up in Kansas.
Okay.
So within, I think it's about 72 hours, we had them both in federal custody.
That's what we call good police work.
Well, it's everybody rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. That's the way it's supposed to
I've
work.
been asked, right? It's the way it's supposed to work, and it did. Some people have said, well, it's lucky that Charlie had stopped him. Well, yes, it was absolutely easier to go pull him out of jail than have a manhunt. But
Right.
uh, I mean, we got Bin Laden after it took 10 years, but we got him. So
Right.
we would have found him eventually, but it was much easier to fly up and just take him out of custody.
Did either of those two say what their motive was? I know they were very anti-government.
Right.
Was there a
So,
clear-cut motive why you would want to kill that many innocent, people, women, children? Just devastating.
well, oddly enough, McVeigh was at Waco. He showed up outside Waco and was selling some anti-government, literature and bumper
Mm,
stickers, which is, you're privileged to do in this country. But he was interviewed by a young reporter, a newspaper reporter, and sort of laid out his issues. It was the Brady Bill, government overreach. It was he loved this book called The Turner Diaries, which started with a large vehicle-borne IED blowing up FBI headquarters and starting a revolution.
mm.
That was his goal, was a violent overthrow of the government. Of course, it didn't work. But yeah, it was just a hatred for the government.
Wow. So kill a bunch of innocent people. That just blows my mind. Terrible.
It
But,
was terrible.
but like you said, this is the way it's supposed to work. Somebody does something horrible like this, all local and federal agencies get together and go get the bad guy. So that makes me happy just to hear that.
No, and regardless of what you hear on the news, that happens more often than not,
Yes,
and that's the way it should work.
that's the way it should work. Absolutely. So fast forward a few more years and 9/11 happens. What was your role and what effect did that have on you? I mean, you're piling up some serious stuff here.
Well, I was pulling in our outer security gate when the FM radio said a plane had struck the trade center, and then but by the time I got into our office, the second plane had hit. There were reports of truck bombs outside DC. Well, that was just the jets going supersonic to intercept any other problems. But it's just chaos. It's absolute chaos on a national scale.
Were you in Oklahoma when
Um,
this happened?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So I was in Oklahoma once, and we implemented every office implemented their emergency operations procedure because you remember that day.
Oh,
Nobody
yes, I
knew what
do.
was going to happen.
Yeah, right.
So there are plans in place, which
Yep.
is comforting to know. But our office in New York, um, Lenny Hatton was a great guy. He was an FBI bomb technician, former Marine, great guy. He actually ran into the building to help people and was killed when the buildings collapsed.
Mm,
So four of us were sent to New York to help backfill the FBI's efforts there. We had a command post set up near Ground Zero along the Hudson River. And when I wasn't on scene there at Ground Zero, we would help the New York Special Response Group there, the New York SWAT team, basically
Yeah.
execute warrants in the city for things that were we thought tangentially related to the attack. It was a crazy time.
How long were you in New York then?
As a matter of weeks, I remember my birthday is in early October. One night we came back from shift, and there was the evidence response team was there. My team wasn't there. They were actually at a place called Fresh Kills Landfill sifting the evidence.
Yeah.
But it was myself and a couple other bomb techs, and I was with the New York evidence response team. And I didn't know these people. I was just stuck in the mix with them.
Yeah.
But at midnight, they rolled out a little birthday cake saying happy birthday to
Aw.
me, which, yeah, I mean, everybody's looking for some little bright spot.
Absolutely, yes.
Is this was a horrible event. Just the magnitude, the scale of the destruction. Imagine it was roughly 14 acres of just absolute destruction. It was horrible.
Now, how long were you there in total?
As a number of weeks, I don't have the date that I came back. It was about 3 weeks, as I recall.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So, I mean, what did you do and continue to do for your mental health after being exposed to all of this, like death and destruction at a super high magnitude?
Well, men and women in law enforcement at any level and our military partners are exposed to things that most people will never see.
Right.
And day after day, year after year, it piles up. I told somebody once it was like each event's throwing a brick in your backpack. It starts getting a little heavy. I tell my students now, I said, you have to have some productive way to deal with the things that you do that are just your job. It sounds unusual to other people. So if it's friends or family or faith, whatever it might be, but it's got to be something in a productive way. Alcohol won't work, drugs
No, it
won't
doesn't.
work. You can't go home and kick the dog. So you have to have interests outside. It's very easy to get insulated and only stay with people that do what you do.
Right.
But then every conversation is basically just work. So I'm on a couple of boards in my little town. I play drums in the little church band. I teach at a university now just because I enjoy seeing the faces of the future. These students are going to be the next chemists and FBI agents. So yeah, you got to stay active. When I was in New York, I remember I worked overnights and we stayed in downtown Manhattan. And you can't sleep in Manhattan the daytime anyway. But I needed to get out and do something besides just sit in the room and wait for the shift to start
Sure.
because it can get a little dark quickly if you don't keep yourself engaged in something
Right.
else.
Right. Okay. Very good. So, life after the Bureau, how many years were you there total?
I was in the FBI a little over 31 years.
That's unusual, isn't it? That's a long time.
Well, it is, but when you start as a baby, you get a little longer window.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, we're mandatory to retire at age 57,
Okay.
and I was offered an extension to stay a little longer, but 31 years was plenty. I got to see a lot. I traveled with the State Department and NATO as an instructor. Um, Worked on every continent but Antarctica.
Wow.
Some were great places, some were less. I mean, I've been to Nepal and Somalia and the Middle East a few times, and I got to see a lot of wonderful things. But 31 years was enough. So I retired and thought I was just going to fish or learn to play golf or something. But the University of Central Oklahoma has a Forensic Science Institute, and some former Bureau folks were there, and they said, "Hey, have you ever thought about coming up to teach?" And I had not. And he goes, "Oh, give it a try." Because most of the last half of my career was as an instructor for the FBI.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I now teach forensic investigation of mass disasters and crime scene processing to the future of our little vocation.
Well, you certainly have the credentials, and your students are lucky to have you as a teacher because there's so many teachers that have never done the job. That's
Well, yeah, you're kind to say. They keep inviting me back, so I'm happy to go.
okay. So you're a teacher and you're also an author. Tell us about that.
Well, again, it was a blessing. As I traveled, I would just keep notes. One of my best friends from childhood, who knew I wanted to be an agent since I was about 10, she told me when I got my orders to Quantico, "You're going to forget stuff. I know you too well. You're going to forget everything. So
Right.
write it down," which was really good advice. So I
That's
would
great
have,
advice. Yeah.
yeah, but the back of napkins or envelopes, I would just jot down where we went and why we were doing it and some of the details of some of the bigger cases. And in retirement, I had it. My son, he's 25 now. I thought maybe one day he'd like to see why I was gone so much in his youth, so I strung them together in kind of a loose chronology, but then wasn't really sure what to do with it. I explored how to get a book published, and it seemed really quite difficult. So you've put, I think, what, 11 books
Yeah.
out? Yeah, so it's harder than I thought. So I stuck the whole thing in a drawer and just thought, so much for that. But I was very fortunate. McFarland Publishing contacted me to write a forensic science textbook,
Mm.
and I'd never considered that. But I said, well, I do have this other thing I've been working on. And they said, we don't really publish that, but let us think about it. Send us a couple of stories. So I did, and over a period of months, they decided they would publish it, and now it's out on the market. And I was very humbled to have a book launch down at the Oklahoma City National Bombing Memorial
Oh,
just
wow.
a couple of weeks ago.
Wow. Yeah. The name of the book is Hazardous Devices, Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper, which is quite the combo, I gotta say. So, when somebody reads your book, what do you want them to walk away with when they're done reading it?
I think I would like them to see the diversity of work that the FBI does. I was fortunate to have dip a toe in several different the types of work that we do, but it highlights how often law enforcement does have to sacrifice a little bit, time away from home, time on the road. The international work I did, some were great places, some were not so great, but it's not just the cases. It's a little bit about the food. In some of these places, we would eat snakes or guinea pigs
Yeah.
or whatever they ate is what we ate.
Sure.
I always tried to see something positive. I was teaching an underwater school with the Australian Navy, and we said, "Hey, let's go dive the Great Barrier Reef one weekend." So,
Oh, wow.
uh, you had mentioned, how do you keep up with some of the pace of these things? There's always something else to do. So
Okay.
I would try not to just sit and wait for the next call. So I got to see a lot of things: Machu Picchu and Angkor Wat, and the Taj Mahal. These crazy things that I never thought I would get to see, and I was basically getting paid to do it, and it was a wonderful experience.
What would you say to a young person that wants to be an FBI agent? How should they prepare themselves?
It's academically challenging. The academy is a lot like college, except with guns. So
And you run.
it's yeah, it's a diverse career, but still, I think it's less than 6% of applicants are accepted. So um, I would say try. You're not going to get it if you don't try, which is really true with anything in life.
Right.
But as they say, luck favors the prepared. So you have to do the work. You have to have a 4-year degree. But it's a fascinating job, and I got the sense, or at least I wanted to feel, that I was giving back to the community, because you'll meet people on what may be their worst day, whether they've
Right.
lost their life savings to a con man or been victim of a bombing, one extreme or another. But I like to think I was able to help some people along the way.
Yeah. Now, is there specific like majors that I mean, for you as accounting or a lawyer, what does it look like now? What is the landscape now?
The bureau has changed because the world has changed.
Right.
Now, computer, IT type of tech backgrounds, language, certain languages, as you can imagine, Chinese, Farsi, whatever they may be, because we were still involved highly in counterintelligence, counterespionage. But yeah, the technical degrees are very popular, and we're still looking for accountants and lawyers. And I'll say there is a diversified group which kind of covers everybody else. Uh, Statistically, that pool is going to be a much larger group, so your odds of getting selected are a little bit smaller. Had I stayed in engineering initially, I would have been in that diversified group.
Okay.
But by changing to accounting, I got into a much smaller pool of candidates. So there's a little bit of logistics involved in trying to make sure you're as attractive as possible. But
Sure.
if it's something you want to do, whatever it is, if it's something you want to do, you have to put in the work to get it accomplished.
Got it. So what do you think of the FBI now? When you look back, when you were in there, what do you think about it now?
I'm still very proud of my career. My training agent, my sniper partner, he was hired by J. Edgar Hoover. And
Oh,
when he retired, he goes, I don't recognize the Bureau. I'm glad I was in when I was in. And I didn't understand what he meant. But 31 years has passed, and uh, it is a little different Bureau now than it was when I was in. Not because of anything I did, it's
right.
just different times. Um, the FBI has always been intended to be an apolitical uh, operation. The director is designed to serve for a 10-year term, which outlasts any presidential term. I like to think that it is above the fray. And, to quote, was it Jack Webb from Dragnet, just the facts,
Yep.
right? Without any of the political bias. But no, it's still a great organization. I like to say it's the best law enforcement agency in the world. We work well with our counterparts from other nations, and it's clearly on the global stage. So I'm proud of what the Bureau has done.
Yeah, what I've seen through probably the last 10, 15 years is it really gets drawn into politics, unfortunately. And like you said, I think in order for it to survive, it has to be apolitical. It has to be agnostic to whoever is sitting in the White House.
And that was the design.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoover had a great deal of power, and after he passed, it was changed where a director can only serve for 10 years. But really, I've worked, I believe, for 7 directors,
Wow.
and I don't believe any of them served 10 years. Director Mueller ended up, I believe, at 12 because of 9/11.
Mm.
But President Clinton terminated Judge Sessions. So, directors being let go by presidents is nothing new.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's when you live in Washington, I think things get a little dicey. But the men and women that do the job, just like in law enforcement and our military partners, they're just there to do the work, and they're very good at what they do.
Right. I'll definitely piggyback that with, I believe that the agents, for the most part, all have good hearts and they want to do the right thing. And sometimes they become weaponized by politics. And that's so unfortunate when you start seeing that and you're like, really? Come on now. That's poor.
There are a lot of guardrails in place to try to avoid it, but people are people with individual
Yes,
agendas sometimes.
absolutely. So let's start landing the plane here. What's next for you?
Well, I hope to continue teaching. I really enjoy that. This book is turned into a little bit of a hobby, which I enjoy. I'll be going back to Birmingham for a little book signing and doing some other local events, which I enjoy doing. I hope folks enjoy the book, and it's available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy books. So uh, I'd be happy if anybody got a copy and let me know what they thought.
So where can people go to find out more about you and your books? Your website?
My website is barryblackokc.com. That's BARRYBLACK OKC.com. It's got my background. I enjoy doing speaking engagements for corporate and other entities, law enforcement entities. Yeah, I'm retired and enjoying every minute of that. It was I loved my job, but retirement, it was time.
All right. The name of the book is Hazardous Devices, Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper. Barry, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Patrick, it's my pleasure. I hope to stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone, for coming back for the conclusion of my interview with FBI Special Agent SWAT Sniper and Master Bomb Tech Barry Black. Wow. Barry is the real deal and is welcome back on the show anytime. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Cops and Riders podcast. If you haven't done so yet, can you take a minute and rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? If you have already, thank you. As always, thank you for all of your support, and, of course, let's be careful out there.